uh, core groups like Honda, Hyundai, Maruti? What kind of embedded questions are asked there? How to prepare for embedded interviews? What kind of skill sets you need to develop? We will discuss all of these things. Plus, we will also discuss about the questions that are asked in specifically semiconductor industry, people who are working in semiconductor domain, and what kind of interview preparation they need to have, and what questions they need to prepare for, how they need to study for their interviews, and their uh, how to prepare for the exams that companies might be taking for the specifically for the embedded profiles. So we will cover up all these aspects in basically in these sessions. We will cover up the basics to polish your basics and to take you some at some level, and then we would move slowly onto another level, that is on specifically on those controllers which are primarily used in the industry. What are the challenges? We will also talk about the architecture of those controllers, how they are used in the industry, what are the interfaces to which they communicate to various peripherals and sensors that are there in the board, how to design and optimize your product development. And we would also cover up basic portions, that the questions that will be there for fresher as well as for experienced candidates. So stay tuned with the program. I'm definitely it will help you out a lot in upcoming time in the embedded uh, domain. People who are seriously are thinking of making a specific career into core embedded field, either into embedded software engineering or embedded hardware engineering. So that's two fields that primarily embedded covers up. So uh, Shri, can we have some more people like, or we should start?
Yeah, I think Vikrant, you should start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So good evening, folks. Hope you had a great day today. Myself today, Vikrant, will be more focusing for you guys upon the world of microcontrollers. So you see microcontrollers everywhere, starting for the washing machine to your ovens to your cars to your automotive devices. Nowadays, microcontrollers have a lot of use cases in the IoT space, especially for home automation devices or in the B2B industry, that IoT devices that are used in the industries as well. So microcontrollers are everywhere, and embedded engineers are required everywhere. Not only in the firmware domain to write firmwares for microcontrollers and processors and system on chips, that is SoCs, but also in embedded engineers are required to design the complex hardware. The hardware should be like robust. It should be used. It's in use in industry. So certain environmental factors need to be taken in the mind, like temperature, like its durability, toughness. These are the kind of factors that you need to take in mind while designing the complex hardwares. How do you start with those designing hardwares from the scratch? We will also discuss about that in this course, as well as we will also more focus on the microcontrollers, like how microcontrollers have really come up and reshaped the world, how the microcontrollers are being used daily in every device like you see in the industry, like starting from the washing machines to the refrigerators to your ovens. Everywhere you see a microcontroller would be always there, whether it's a ARM-based microcontroller or an 8-bit microcontroller or a 16-bit microcontroller, but you will see a microcontroller everywhere, wherever you will see a machine that is being operating. So that's the basic starting of this course sessions. Myself, Vikrant Thakur. I'm currently working in one of the manufacturing industries, which primarily works in the automotive domain for their clients. Primarily, their clients are big giants, and I have been working in embedded field for last 4 to 5 years, and mostly I work on the software domain. My specialities are into primarily write softwares for the microcontrollers, processors, and SoC chips for our IoT and automotive products, as well as I also look into the hardware. not into primarily deep, but I do also look into validate the hardware from the schematic to the layout, so that when it's time to get the hardware getting processed with the firmware, it should not have any problems. So that's what I work. I primarily work in the research and development team of my company, and I've been a trainer and speaker for various sessions. I've been speaker at the Google Developer Meet. I have been speaker at the IoT NCR, which is the fourth largest community across the world in terms of the IoT space. I'm also a founder of a community called as Deeply Embedded, and I'm associated with Shri to share knowledge to all the folks who are interested to build their career in the field of embedded, because I knew the embedded field is not that widespread. Like if you see in the case of IT, you have tons of resources, people are there to help you out on YouTube or Google, but in embedded things gets little complex because it's the world of electronics. So you need to have a little understanding of physics, architecture, programming, as well as hardware basics are required. So these are the type of skills that you need to collaborate into one to be an embedded engineer. But believe me, embedded domain is one of the best domains. You tend to work, if you get a chance to work in an embedded domain, then you tend to work in a product development field. You will be developing products that will be used in the industries, and there will be a lot of challenges while developing the products. It will be not a simple IT job that you need to just develop a website or handle a server base. It will be an end-to-end product development if you end up entering into the embedded field or working for a one of the companies that work in the research and development for the establishing the product industry. So it's a wonderful field, and I will be covering up the challenges, the basics, and the architecture, starting from the architecture to the hardware design to the programming to the various microcontrollers that are used in the market, and the cases and the scenarios. So let's get started. I'm very eager to share with you guys the kind of knowledge that I have developed over the past few years in the embedded domain. So let's start from very basic, like why microcontrollers are manufactured. We have microprocessors in the industry. We also heard about this term called system on chip. So the processors and the system on chip we will be discussing in the advanced course. But let's focus right now on the world of microcontrollers, like why microcontrollers are manufactured. So the first point is the task of a microcontroller. Wherever you see a product that embeds a microcontroller, that product would have a special functionality, a sophisticated functionality. Let's suppose to take a case of a refrigerator. So a case of a refrigerator is to cool down the things and to keep in an environment where the things don't get rusted or things that don't get destroyed. So for that, the refrigerator is designed in order to maintain that certain temperature, so that the things don't get rusted immediately. Like if you take a case of an oven is to heat the object from all four surroundings. So the task of that machines that I'm talking about is very sophisticated. It's very specific. That's why we say whenever we are using microcontrollers, we have a restriction on memory. We have a minimum memory in which we need to write the code, and that code needs to be very efficient in terms of the functionality, because that if we try to increase the size of the chip, like let's suppose we increase the size, we can definitely increase the size, but on the other side, if we try to increase the size, the cost of the overall product will definitely increase, because if the size is increasing, the memory blocks are also increasing. Secondly, the power consumption of the overall product will definitely increase. Like in the case of if you see a laptop that might be operating on an Intel Core chip, it needs a USB adapter. For some IoT products that you might be using, like the battery operated products, they don't need a USB power station to power it up. They can be powered with a small mAh battery. So that is the main functionality. So the microcontrollers are used for sophisticated functionality, for a specific functionality. The task is to provide a specific functionality to the product, and that task would be very specific. Like let's suppose we take a case of day-to-day industry, like the barriers that we have, the barriers that are used to control whether the cars need to enter into a gate system or not. That barriers are specifically designed with a sensor that detects the motion of the car. So that motion has been detected by the sensor, and then the data is being processed by the microcontroller, and then that barrier has been controlled. So that's a very predefined task, and there the entire system would not be working on a very high power. It will be working on a very sophisticated low power. So we have a very restricted memory in the microcontrollers. That's why we, as a microcontroller, as a firmware engineers or embedded software engineers, we need to write efficient codes. And for writing efficient codes, and the code that we need to write that specifically talks to the hardware, as much as less barrier. So C is the one language that we have till now from last 70 years. Even if you see in the IT sector, there is an evolution. Like you see, there was C++, then there was Java, then was a JavaScript for the programming websites. Now they have Go. But in embedded, if you see, it's entirely core. It started from C, and till now C and C++ is primarily used to program the controllers, because these are the languages which can directly talk to the hardware. There's no such language which can directly talk to the hardware. There is always an interface that might be required in the case of when you are programming in either JavaScript, Java, Python for the hardware specific architectures. So number one point, why microcontrollers are manufactured: to handle sophisticated functionality, to handle specific functionality. Like let's take a one case more. Like let's suppose you have an attendance system, and that attendance system works on a biometric case. So that the attendance system that you are developing, that biometric needs to scan and intercept in the memory itself, that the bar scan that happens, it's there in the system or not. So that system, it embeds almost like 30 to 40,000 fingerprints of a whole organization. So how it's working when it's not connecting to the server? It's replying at the offline base. So these kind of devices, when you need to develop, will have a restricted memory, because those devices are not operated by a high power. They're operated by a low power. They can be even operated by a battery, and these kind of case scenarios require a sophisticated functionality where we have restricted memory and operate on a low power, and it's designed in a way that efficient performance can be delivered at a minimum low cost. So the functionality of a microcontroller requires a sophisticated functionality, number one. Number two, restricted memory and operating on a low power. Number three, the manufacturing cost as compared to processors and the SoC is comparatively very less. If you see, so if you see the costing of every manufacturing controller would be comparatively less as compared to a processor and an SoC. So it has a low manufacturing cost, which reduces the cost of your product. Second point, it has a restricted memory and operates on a low power. If we have let's suppose if we have a larger memory, then definitely it will increase the cost, because it will increase the cost to design more memory blocks, as well as it will also increase the power, because more number of clock cycles will be required to fetch that instruction from the later part of the memory. So we will discuss about these points. Let's focus on, if we increase the memory, then what will happen? Obviously, it will increase the power consumption as well as the cost of the controller. So we have a restricted memory and a low power. Third is the sophisticated functionality. It is used for very specific applications. That application do not require very complex tasks to be performed at real time. We do not require, like if you talk about a computer that runs on an Intel Core i3 processor, you can run multiple tasks at a similar time. But in a microcontroller, you might not be running so many tasks at a similar time. It might or might not be, but the task that will be running by a microcontroller would be very specific and would handle specific functionalities. So that's why the microcontrollers are manufactured, and it's used in day-to-day application, because we have so much sophisticated functionalities that needed to be performed by the machines. So there is where we have an embedded microcontroller. Okay. let's coming back to like problems that is being faced by the embedded engineers every day. So a lot of problems that faced by an embedded engineer. Let's suppose you need to have a USB interface for your microcontroller in order to communicate with your PC. You need a USB interface because your computer communicates over USB. So how would you communicate directly to the microcontroller? You need to have a microcontroller that can handle that much amount of differential signal. Means that the signal that will be coming from the computer, in order to process it to the microcontroller, you need to have some kind of architecture inside in order to process that signal easily. So that kind of cases where you need to have to select a microcontroller for a specific application. Let's suppose for a biometric system, for a barrier based systems, or for a IoT based products like your trackers, your tags. There's kind of case scenarios requires a lot of cases where you need to select the right microcontroller for your design. If you do not select the right microcontroller for your design, then you will regret a lot, because once the design is being completed and is manufactured, it takes around 1 to 2 months to manufacture, and later you realize, okay, I haven't selected the right microcontroller. So you need to have a right prescription about which microcontroller I need to select for the specific application. If you are going into automotive, then the microcontrollers are different. Their working case scenarios might be different. The GPIOs, that the pins of a microcontroller, might be having more source to sink current that can drive the application. If you are going into let's suppose if you are operating some tags, or you are having a truly wireless systems like your microphones or speakers, then those kind of application require very low power because they operate on a battery operated systems. So that will have another series of microcontrollers that might be working on a very low power application. Suppose you need to have a microcontroller that have a specific task performance, and you need to reduce the memory size as well as the power consumption and the overall hardware design that you might be designing for that specific product. Then that microcontroller that you might be selecting for that product would be entirely different. So there are various points on which you select the right microcontroller, and it depends upon industry to industry, whether you're working in automotive or IoT or electrical department where electrical wiring and harnessing is taking place. These all industries will have different kind of microcontrollers for their different applications. Like let's suppose I give you one case scenario, I give you one case scenario of the tags, where you need microcontroller which operates on a very low power. So for that series you need to be very perfect in selecting a microcontroller that operates on a very low power application, maybe having a sleep mode when it's not operating, a perfect sleep mode where it's consuming a current which is in the micro ampere, it's in UA. So that kind of cases where you need to select that kind of controller, you need to have a lot of perception in your mind, like which controller I need to go for. And cases where, like suppose you have number of sensors, and you select a microcontroller. Let's suppose if I select a microcontroller which have one ADC and that supports only 3 channels, and I figure it out later when hardware was designed that I have 4 sensors and I need to process the data well, then that design would be wasteful. So it's very important to have an understanding what kind of IOs you have on a microcontroller, what kind of requirement that you have. Number 2, what kind of power budget that you need to design, whether it's a power that is required at the output side more, so you need to have a microcontroller that have more source to sink current capabilities, or you need a microcontroller that operates on a very low power. So these kind of applications would definitely require a lot of skills, experience, as well as failures to understand which microcontroller or which chipset would be beneficial for a specific industry. Okay. So for understanding those case scenarios, what we actually figure it out, we often neglect the basic idea, the basic fundamental blocks on which the microcontroller is designed. That is called as architecture. So why I'm starting with the architecture, because it really helps us to understand how a microcontroller is designed. What are the key parameters that we keep in mind in while designing a chip. It not only helps an embedded engineer, but it also helps a embedded engineer, but it also helps a VLSI engineer as well. So person who wants to go into a VLSI field for chip designing, it really helps them to design efficient chips that might be used in the industry. So it the understanding an architecture, understanding the design of a specific chip helps you to understand, number one, what functionality will be my microcontroller use. Because if you understand the architecture, you will be able to understand what are the inputs and outputs, how the inputs and outputs are working, what are the requirement that might I need to have a controller for. Let's suppose you have a Wi-Fi based application or a BLE based application both running at the same time, and you need to efficiently reduce the cost. You cannot have external modules to communicate. So for that, you need to have an microcontroller or an SoC chip that supports both Wi-Fi as well as BLE. Let's suppose you take a case where you need to integrate 4 to 5 sensors and you have only 3 channels on a microcontroller. So if you didn't understand the architecture of a microcontroller quite well, like how the architecture has been designed, then you won't be able to figure it out which microcontroller should I select for a specific application. So many of the people who are working in the embedded field would neglect to understand the importance of an architecture. But from not only from the interview perspective for a person who is working in the industry, it's very important to understand the core architecture. Today we will more be focusing on brushing up the basics, then we will take upon little advanced topics later in our classes. And this is basically the block diagram that I've shown you for a PIC16X microcontroller. That is an 8-bit microcontroller. It's a simple architecture and not a very complex one, but we need to have a basic idea of how our architecture works, so that if we face any issue, like suppose if you are not able to debug, you have selected a right microcontroller based upon your IO ports, the power consumption, the power budget, and the industry that you might be targeting, that product that you might be developing for a specific application, you select the right microcontroller. But now when you're programming those controllers, you figure it out like you have a certain issue that you're not able to solve at the C programming language. Then in some case scenarios, you also need to go into the instruction level. So to handle those instructions, you don't need to have every instruction in mind. All you need to have is understanding of the architecture, like how this architecture works. If you have that understanding of how that architecture works, then you can figure it out whether what will be the major cause of that specific code that is creating that such problems. So let's suppose if I write a function. So you are all college students, you might have done a little basic programming. So let's suppose if I write a function and I'm also having an interrupt function. So that interrupt function is triggered before that function, and I'm not able to figure it out why my code why my compiler is not able to go into that function, and why it's going into an interrupt. And in that interrupt, if it's going into an reset, then obviously it won't be able to go into that function which is been to be executed later. So these kind of problems when you face, you need to have a basic understanding of how architecture works, how registers work, how bare metal programming works, how then from the bare metal you move up to middle layer programming, and then things to get started a little bit more complex, but it really helps you out in understanding how things are working at the various levels. So starting from the architecture, today we'll discuss about how architectures are designed and what are the basic key factors of how we design an architecture, what are the basic points that we keep in mind while designing the complex architectures, as well as the simple architectures that might be used in the industries for specific task applications. Okay. So today we discuss about very basic stuff to brush up your knowledge about architectures. So we would be discussing more about how the architectures of the microcontrollers are primarily classified. So primarily they are classified on two bases. First are the basis of the instruction set, and second is the basis of the memory IO configurations. So we talk about both of the aspects. First we talk about more into instruction sets. So instruction set is basically the set of instruction that tells a microcontroller to do something. Like let's suppose if you need to turn on the LED and you need to turn on the LED at a specific interval. Let's suppose you need to blink an LED at an interval of 1 second. So there will be specific program that you will be writing in the C, and you will be then flashing that program from your desktop to the architecture specific platform that you might be writing the code. Suppose you writing the code for the PIC controller, the PIC architecture that I've shown in the previous slide. So for that you need to have certain memory in which the code will be flashed, and that code that is flashed in that memory will have set of instructions. That instructions is being converted by your compiler by a set of tool chains that I will also discuss later in the sessions. What are compilers, what are tool chains, what are linker scripts? These are all the things that you need to be very clear when you are appearing for an interview, especially for the fresher or experienced interviews. What are compilers, tool chains, linker scripts, or generic compilers, how the code is being converted from the code that you write in your laptops is being converted into an architecture specific platform, and what is an ISA of a microcontroller. So these are the things that we will discuss later. Well, let's now more focus upon things that I will be discussing here. I will more focus upon today upon the architecture sets. How does an instruction set really helps you to define how does a microcontroller architecture basically works on the instruction and the memory IO configurations. So when we talk about an instruction is basically a set of command that tells a microcontroller to do something. So you have a CPU that is there, and you have a flash memory that will be having all the instructions that you have programmed in order to tell your microcontroller what to do. So how would you process that instructions into the program into a specific instructions? That is all done by the compiler and the tool chains that is there. And once the code is being flashed, there are set of instructions that are there at a specific memory addresses, and which is fetched by your CPU. And when fetched by the CPU, it's been processed and stored, and certain task is being implemented. Let's suppose you have a task, you have an IR sensor that you primarily have used in the colleges as well, and you have a motor. You need to control that motor based upon the movement of a person. So let's suppose if a IR sensor detects some movement, the IR radiations based upon the human radiation, or if it's sending some radiation and getting back some radiations form, and it's detecting the sensor is predicting some output, and you're processing that output with the help of a microcontroller and controlling that motor. In this kind of scenarios, you will be having certain instruction. First instructions would be like how to process the data being received from the sensor, how to intercept that data, what will be the threshold that will be intercept, how to calibrate that data. Based upon that instructions that you are having in the chip, you will be controlling the logic to control the motor, like how to operate that motor, how to control that motor. So these kind of instructions will be embedded in your flash memory and will be processed by your CPU by a certain kind of interface called as bus. So how does that bus works, we more discuss later into this memory IO and configurations, but focus on the instruction sets, like how based upon the instructions we classify the controllers. So architecture of a microcontroller is defined by the two major instruction sets. First is a reduced set instruction architecture, and second is a complex instruction set architecture. We are all familiar with this. We have also studied in the colleges, but I will more go into little deep into more sessions about these instruction sets, and I will also go into much more deeper about concepts like pipelining, multi-threading, multi-pipelining processes, which will also help you to understand why the ARM-based processors are being primarily selecting for the industry. Like if you have seen recently, the Apple have recently released a laptop that is based on an ARM processor. The architecture of that chip is an ARM-based processor chip. So why the ARM is being nowadays being preferred, even though it's a reduced set instruction case. So these kind of questions will come up in the next sessions as we proceed. But now focus on the reduced set instruction. So reduced set instruction and the complex set instruction, both instruction sets are little different in one case scenarios. So if I talk about risk is basically the instruction sets that have more instructions, and obviously the tasks which have more instructions would definitely require more memory in order to operate that. Let's suppose let's take an example, like I am throwing a ball to a dog, and the ball is being catched by the dog, and the ball is being taken back to me. So if I talk about a controller that have a RISC-based architecture, those will have number of instruction to execute that certain task. So the task of a dog is to catch that ball and take that ball back to me. But now this task will be implemented in certain instructions, like I will throw the ball. This is the instruction 1. The ball will be catched by the dog. This is instruction 2. The ball then will be received by the dog. This is instruction 3, and then ball will be taken back to me. So these kind of case where the architecture of a microcontroller is based on the instruction set of RISC-based instruction set. So those architectures will have more number of instruction to execute a certain task. So the task was the dog will catch the ball and bring it back to me, and those tasks was implemented in 4 instructions. So by these instructions have increased, obviously we can do that instructions, that 4 instruction that I took in order to implement a one task, which can be easily done in the CISC-based processors. It just requires a one instruction. I will give one instruction that the ball will be cached, and dog will take the ball back to me. That entire task will be done in one instruction. Like let's suppose if you talk in the world of the microcontrollers, so you need to add 2 numbers, A and B, and the data of that A and B is into specific memory, and that specific memory is in the form of a registers. So when I talk about certain memory where the certain numbers are being stored, and it's in the form of the memory is being form of we call as a registers, then that data that needed to be processed, that will have in the RISC based processor, it will have 4 instructions. Like number 1, the ALU will be there to take the numbers. First the numbers, the data of that numbers will be taken from the memory, like the memory addresses for that numbers was 0x00 0x36. That data from that specific memory is being read by the CPU and is stored in the general purpose register, the registers that are there with the CPU. And if I talk about a register is just nothing but a certain block of memory that is used to store data frequently. To store data frequently, we have a certain block of memory. When we talk about, we call them as a registers. So once the data is being taken from the memory and been stored in the general purpose, the CPU based registers, now the data will be processed by the CPU. It will send that, it will understand the instruction that is fetched from the flash memory, that both the numbers need to be plus. So it will send it to the ALU. ALU will process the data and it will send back to the CPU, and the CPU then store into one of the general purpose register as a result. So this process where we need to add 2 numbers at a one time, we need to add 2 numbers at a single time. For that we can do that. We don't require 4 instructions in CISC. We can do it in one instruction. Like all that tasks that I've told you guys, like fetching the data from the memory, then storing in the general purpose registers, and then then the CPU processing the instruction from the flash and understanding both the numbers needed to be added, and it processes the data to the ALU, that is arithmetic log unit, which performs the mathematical operations, and then the data that is being processed, it's been stored by one of the general purpose registers. These all the tasks can be done in a one single instruction rather than having 4 to 5 instructions. But for the RISC, it have 4 to 5 instructions, but the CISC, it has only 1 instructions. Both of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. Like in the case of a CISC based processor, a task obviously, if you're trying the task that can be implemented in a single instruction, it obviously makes the processor very fast, because you are able to implement certain tasks, subtasks that was there in one task in just one instruction, rather than having 4 instructions for that. So when you have just one instruction to in order to implement those all 4 tasks that were there in that one task, the processor speed dramatically increases. On the other side, if you talk about a RISC-based processors as compared to CISC, they have comparatively less speed, because they are having 4 instructions to implement that single task, whereas a CISC is implementing only one instruction to implement that task. But in CISC, we having that one instruction, that's why it requires more clock cycles to implement that. Clock is the speed, like everything requires certain time to implement. Like let's suppose if I'm telling, like in layman terms, when I was giving an example of a dog to catch that ball and take that ball back to me, that also requires certain time duration, in which time it will complete that certain task. So that time that is required, that is spreaded by the clock source, that clock that we have. So that clock that we are using, that clock cycles, the number of clocks, obviously the number of clock cycles that increases, the overall processing capability of that processor would dramatically increases. Like if the clock cycle of the certain controller is able to process that task in a large number of clock cycles, but able to implement it so one instruction, then the processing capability of that controller dramatically increases as compared to a RISC, where it is taking 4 instructions to complete one task. Okay, so where we have number of clocks, that is, they are comparatively very high clocks that required. Obviously, the power consumption of that controller increases. That's why CISC-based processors comparatively consumes large power as compared to RISC-based processors. RISC-based processors consumes comparatively less power, because the clock cycles that are required to implement the instruction is less, because the task that is divided into subtasks, and each subtask is being processed by single instructions, whereas the task that is processed by a CISC, it requires only one instruction. So that in order to implement that one instruction, more clock cycles will be required. And for that specific duration, if you need to implement that fast, then obviously if more clock cycles will be required, more power will be required. Like let's take a case in a layman terms. Like if your dog is catching the ball and taking back to you, then more time would, if you need that dog to catch that ball really fast and take it back to you, then the dog would definitely require more power to do that task very fast. So if you same in the case on the microcontroller side itself, same is in the case of the semiconductor industry. So if you need to have that task really fast, then if you are having single instruction for that, so more clock cycles would be required definitely. And then if more clock cycles would be required, more power consumption would be there. So that's a basic key feature. But nowadays we are only not specifically focusing on CISC-based processors. We are moving on the RISC-based processors, and we are achieving the same efficiency, not that same, but we are on the process on the line to achieve that same efficiency what we can achieve in the CISC. Like if you see the Apple computers, like if I talk about the Intel chips are CISC-based processors. Your ARM controllers that you primarily have in the industry, they are RISC-based controllers. Oh, that's why the ARM controllers that you use, especially the microcontrollers, they are RISC-based processors. They require less clock cycles because every task is divided into several instructions, and it consumes comparatively less power. Whereas the CISC-based processor, the Intel processor that is there in your laptops, would consume more power, and that's why you have a power adapter to power your processor. But as far as the processing capability is concerned, the CISC based processor have more processing capability than the RISC. But in today's case, we are able to achieve that same kind of efficiency in the RISC based processors as well. So what is the key reason for that? It's what are the various ways we can achieve that? We will be discussing more about those concepts in later classes, like pipelining, multi-threading, and multi-pipelining processes. But for now, we will more focus upon the basics to consolidate basics, like how the architecture is designed of a microcontroller. It's designed on the two bases. It's designed on the memory organization and the I/O structure, and second is the based upon the instruction set. So these are the two basic that we keep in mind while designing a architecture of a microcontroller. So if I talk about till now, anyone have any certain doubts? If anyone have any doubts, they can ask if anyone have. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. Anyone have any certain doubts? Yeah.
Yeah, I have one doubt.
Yeah.
You said that instruction will have a specific amount of time to complete it, right?
Yeah.
For example, one instruction there will be one clock cycle.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the controller.
Depends, right? Is there any possibility to take more time, more than the usual?
Like for a certain instruction to process?
Yes.
Yeah, it can happen, but it happens based upon the task that you want to implement. Like the task can be really simple, like blinking an LED is a very simple task. If you are blinking it with the delay, but if you are having 3 to more tasks at the same time, and you having more instructions for that, so for in that case scenario, the same instruction, this instruction that you are processing would definitely take a little more time, because you also have certain elements that are coming into picture. Now you also have interrupts. You need to process that interrupts as well. So for that case scenarios, that certain instruction would definitely take more time. And for your second question, when you were asking about the clock, it depends upon the controller to controller. Like in PIC controller, it takes 2 clock cycle to implement one instruction. In 8051, I think it's 4 clock cycles to implement one instruction. So it depends upon controller, as well as it depends upon the architecture of that controller, like how the bus is being connected to various IO ports and various peripherals that are there in the controller itself. So those are the fundamentals which makes these things a little more complex.
For example, let's take a copy instruction. For example,
yeah,
it will take ideally it will take only one clock cycle to execute the instruction. And is there any case that it will take more than one clock cycle?
Yeah, it can take more than one clock cycle
for a particular instruction.
Yeah, but it depends upon the task that you are trying to implement. Or in many case scenarios, the instruction that you are having would take the same amount of time as previously. But in some complex tasks that you are having, where you have 3 to 4 sensors and you are controlling some applications, there where you have certain kind of interrupts that are involved, nested interrupts, that interrupt within an interrupt, these kind of cases where the complexity rises, those cases will definitely take that certain instruction to take more time to process. Otherwise, in all the case scenarios, when you take a certain instruction, it takes the same amount of time to process, if you're talking in the same controller itself.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Anyone have any doubt regarding any question regarding the architecture or the problems faced by the embedded engineers, kind of what kind of products that we have and controllers that we have in the like market where we have those features. Like anyone having any doubt in those cases? Uh, if anyone don't have any doubt, they can ask those doubts either in the comment section later coming up, and or in at the end of the session. So I'm now moving more towards the memory organization. Till now we were discussing about the instruction sets and how the instruction sets are processed, what are the challenges being faced by the embedded engineers. We would now more shift towards from the basics to the instruction sets to the complex applications, like the architecture of a controller based upon the memory organization and the IO ports. Okay. So we have an architecture definition. Today we will more focus upon two architectures, although there are more than two architectures based upon the controller is being designed, and the third architecture will be more architectures, third and fourth architecture we will be covering up in the later sessions. But today we will more focus on the two architectures, understanding those two architectures and brushing up the concepts. The first one is the non-one architecture. The second one is the Howard architecture. So these two architectures were designed in the in 90s, and these architectures are still used in your controllers. If you see ARM-based controllers from ARM M7, they mostly have non-one architecture. ARM M0, they have Howard architecture. In PIC controllers or in Atmel controllers, they generally have Howard architecture based architecture. So what exactly and definition of an architecture defines? It's based upon the non-one architecture and the Howard architecture. We will be covering up those. So based upon this definition, based upon the instruction sets and based upon the memory organization, are based on two key aspects. First is the instruction sets that I discussed earlier, that reduced set instruction set and the complex set instruction set, and second is the memory architecture, that is non-one architecture and the Howard architecture. Okay. So non-one architecture basically is the architecture where you have the same bus for the program memory as well as for the data memory. Now let's focus upon what is exactly a program memory and data memory. We would more focus on these two chips separately in upcoming sessions, because these kind of chips would definitely require one-to-one sessions, because like how we flash the code into flash chip, how the data memory is used, what are the C compilation processes, what is a C layout of a program, and how it's been predefined. So these are the topics that we will cover later in the sessions. But now I give you a basic overview, like how is the program memory and data memory are there. So basically program memory is also called as flash memory, and flash memory is the memory where the instructions is the it's a command that tells the microcontroller to do something. So that instructions are stored in that memory. That is called as flash memory, and from where that flash memory starts, it's generally at address of 0x00, but in some controllers starts at little different addresses. We will discuss that as well, specifically the ARM M series controllers that are used in the industry, M3, M4 and M0 architectures. But for generic purpose, if we talk about the flash memory where the code is being flashed, where all the set of instructions that is processed by your software and the compilers and the overall tool chain, after the instructions will be processed by the specific for the specific controller, for the specific architecture that you are writing for the ISA that is being defined for a controller, which defines the specific instructions for each and every controller. Once it's been converted into once your code is being converted into that specific architecture and being flashed into the controller, then the instructions that are flashed is flashed into the flash chip of the microcontroller. So those flash chip will contain those instructions, and those instructions will be part of that flash chip. and the data memory, that is SRAM. The data memory is SRAM is the memory where your variables. Let's suppose you have declared a variable in your local function. Let's suppose int a. Everyone knows the basics of the programming. So int a, uint 8, uint 16. You have defined these variables in your function. So these variables that you have predefined in your functions, those variables that you have defined would be there in the data memory, part of that data memory, and those data memory would contain everything like the array, the variables, and the global variables that you are declaring, the static variables that you are declaring. Those will be the part of that data memory. And the flash memory would contain the instructions. The second most important difference, although we will take the one-to-one session on these flash memories and the data memories and how they communicate to the controller, what are the buses that are involved in that in communicating with those chips, and what is the pipelining concept. We will discuss those in the later sessions, but now when I focus upon these two chips, flash memory and the data memory, these have one key feature difference that you guys might be knowing as well. The flash chip is a non-volatile in nature. Non-volatile simply means that when you power off your controller, the instructions that are stored in your flash memory will not get erased. It will permanently get stored in your flash memory till that time you flash your code again in your flash memory. The instructions will not change. Either you erase the flash memory or you re-flash the your controller. Those instructions will not change. The instruction that tells the controller to do something. So even if you power it off, the instructions will not get destroyed. The instructions will be there. So whenever you power it on, the controller will start fetching the instruction from the starting address and implement the task that is being predefined in that instructions. And the data memory is basically a memory where your variables are being stored, your global variables, your variables that will be having some arithmetic operations, or the arrays, or your conditions that you have to predefine. So those things will be stored in your data memory, and once it's been power off, then it will be your data memory would get automatically be erased throughout the your program. So these are the two main chips that we will be discussing, and their buses, communication, how they operate, what are the data, what is the starting addresses in more later sessions. But now for that we focus on the two major chips. That is, one is a program chip, that is a flash chip, where the instructions, the set of commands that is used to control the controller will be stored. And second is the data memory. Data memory is that memory where the variables that you define, the variables are the set of elements on which you perform certain operations like plus, minus, subtract, or you store the value, or you compare them. Those variables are being stored in the data memory, whether it's a global variable or a static variable or a local variable inside a function. Those are stored in the data memory. So a CPU, when it needs to fetch those data, how would it fetch the data? It would automatically have some interface in order to communicate with those chips, and those interfaces are called as buses. So the buses is basically like, let's suppose I'm starting, I need to go to my friend's house. So in order to go to my friend's house, I need to, number one, know the address of my friend's house. Number two, I need to know how would I travel, whether I would go from air or whether I go from road. So I need a medium to travel from my place to my friend's house. When I know the location of that friend's house, I need to have that medium. So that if you talk in the layman language, so that medium is being provided by the bus. The CPU, when it's communicating to the chip, the medium is being provided by the bus, and the location to my friend house I'm going, there is the location from which the data is being intercepted by the CPU. Let's suppose if some data is there in the flash memory at 0x008 location, and I need to intercept that, then that way to intercept it is through the bus itself. So when I talk about the non-Voon architecture, the non-Voon architecture have same memory addresses. The memory space of that all the program memory and data memory and the stack RAM that is there, it's same, entirely same for every processor. It's not different. Like the buses that are used to communicate with the flash chip as well as with the program chip is entirely the same, and there is no difference. There is single road to access your friend's X location, as well as there is a single road to access your friend's Y location. Suppose you have two friends X and Y, and you need to go to both the houses. You have single road to go to both the houses. So that's the difference between the, that's the key difference of the non-one architecture. So when you talk about a non-one architecture, the single bus would be there to communicate with the program chip as well as with the data chip. Data chip contains all the variables that you predefine in the in your program, and the program chip would be containing all the instructions that will be there. Okay, so these are the primarily the difference that you have in the non-one architecture. And then you have an instruction decoder that is done by the CPU itself, and process and built-in register that are the core registers of the CPU. These all have the same interfaces, same bus, and the same bus would be there to retrieve the data and to send back into the chip. So that's a major difference between the non-one architecture and the Harvard architecture. If we talk about the Harvard architecture, then there will be separate buses for to communicate with the flash chip as well as to communicate with the data memory. And what is the key feature of the different bus? Like, let's suppose if I need to go to my friend's X house or to my friend's Y house, then I would have the same bus. I would have different roads to go to the different houses. I don't need to have that same road to in order to go to my to both of my friends' house. They have the different roads. So at the same time, if I need to have the communication with both of them, I can go both of them and can have the communication, because both of them have the different roads, so they can come at the same place. So that's the difference between the non-one architecture and the Harvard architecture. Harvard architecture have different buses. So at a similar time, I can communicate with the flash, like I'm fetching the instruction as well as I'm fetching the variables that are predefined in my program. And on the same aspect, if I talk about non-one architecture, then I have to wait. First, I need to fetch the instruction, that I will fetch the data that was there in my program, especially the variables, because both will be needed in order to process what I'm actually doing in the program. Like, let's suppose if I have a variable A and B that I define, those A and B variables that are defined in the function that will go and store in the data memory, that is SRAM. And those variables, when I'm having an operation with those variables, I'm actually adding those variables, then the data of those variables is stored in the flash memory. So I need to read the flash memory from where the data is there. First thing. Second thing, to tell what to do with those variables, the instruction that is there in the flash memory itself. So so in that case scenario, when I need to fetch the instruction in order to add those two variables, I need to first fetch the instruction, then need to fetch the variables. On the similar side, if I talk about the Harvard architecture, this case is doesn't arises. At a similar time, I'm fetching the instruction, and at the similar time, I'm fetching the variables as well, and I'm adding them and processing the result. As per the information we see, the Harvard architecture is comparatively faster than non-one architecture. But when we talk about ARM M series and ARM M4 series, then we have on-one architecture. So why those have the non-one architecture rather than having a Harvard architecture? Because obviously, when you have both the chips and both different buses to communicate, and you are able to process it at a single time, then Harvard architecture would be there in every controller. But still, Harvard architecture is not preferred in every controller. Non-one architecture is sometimes preferred over Harvard architecture. So these kind of questions that we have, why it's preferred over this, even though having that advantage, the Harvard architecture has that advantage of separate buses, is we will discuss more into upcoming sessions. But for some aspect, why we consider non-one architecture over Harvard is, one reason is that the non-one architecture comparatively consumes less space. So if your MCU comparatively have a space which is less, you can even add some more integration, like you can add more channels for the ADC, GPIOs in that same chip itself. Whereas in the Howard architecture, if a chip has been designed on a core based Howard architecture, then chips, the size of the chip increases, the cost would comparatively increase because the buses are getting increased at the similar time. So these are the key major differences, and how sometimes on non-one architecture becomes faster than Howard architecture through the concept of pipelining and multi-threading. We will discuss those concepts later in the course structure as well. So for today, I hope that's it from today's side, because the sessions are for 1 hour each, and we will be covering basics to little advanced. Like today we talked about the bus, we talked about the architecture, we talked about the instruction set. Tomorrow we would focus on pipelining concepts, multi-threading, and how does the pipelining really helps in architectures. And we will more focus on the controllers, how the controllers have been classified from 8-bit to 16 to 32-bit, and where they are used in industries. And then we will talk about the architecture of the controller. So that would be the core structure. Then we will talk about heavy peripheral in detail, every hardware protocol in detail. And in advanced classes, we will have more detailed study about these. Especially for, it's useful for those who are preparing for the interviews for embedded companies, experience as well as freshers. So for today, that's it from my side, folks. To anyone, if anyone have any questions regarding the future of the embedded systems, and for little bit doubts regarding today's question, today session, they can reach out to me, or they can ask right now if they have any question. So anyone have any questions, or if someone is not able to understand certain aspects, these things, PC stack, processor and register interfaces, register space, we will discuss them one by one, and we would more discuss primarily which is of our use, like which might come in handy to our use. These things were important because it's really important to understand what is there inside a controller, and how does the framework of a controller is being defined for understanding. So that's why we define these things. So any question, any doubts till now? Hello? Hello?
I don't
Yeah.
see any question, Vikrant, but I have a suggestion for the guys who joined the call.
Yeah.
So while Vikrant is speaking, right, he is talking more about where the variables are stored, how the instruction cycle happens, and during his discussion about microcontroller also, he was mentioning about the memories. So if you can just keep an ear on everything and take a note, and if you go back and look into those things during your free time, that will help a lot. So now what happens is, as he goes further, he might use some of the terms which you might have, if guys know already, it's okay, but if you don't know, you might not be able to understand. So just take notes of these things, and go back and see what are the definitions, what is von Neumann, RISC, CISC. So example, if you RISC processor is there, right? So as a participant, what you have to go back and see is what are all the RISC processors that are there, what are all the CISC processors that are there. And then if you can just look at a brief and then come back, that will help. So I think all the guys who are here are more dedicated guys who just wanted to learn something in the industry. So it's because at the architecture level, many of the guys would not be knowing things. But as we go further, it will be more interesting. But these are the things which you need to know, as Vikrant is saying, if you are experienced guy or if you're a fresher also, to crack things in the industry, to crack interviews, to get into competitive mode with the people. So a lot of competition is there in the industry. You need to know everything. So you have to gain lot of knowledge. So do take lot of notes and important points. Try to go back, Google them, which will be helpful for you. So that's the suggestion I just wanted to give. So over a period of 5 days, you might hear more of new topics, and I think it's a useful session. See, people who are there in the industry, if you correlate, right, they might have got a lot of points. Vikrant is a good speaker. So thanks, Vikrant. If no one has any question, I think we can wrap up for the day and meet again tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. And would love, we'll be sharing more of programming tutorials as well. Like we will be picking up with the architecture and embedded C programming and how programming for a microcontroller takes place. We will discussing these aspects more. So thank you, folks. Thank you for joining late in the session, and hope you have a wonderful day. Do have some doubts if you have in upcoming class, and it can be primarily not only include for the session, but it can be in generic as well. It can be related to automotive, IoT space, or how embedded is being used in day-to-day applications. So these kind of questions can, if you come across, if you have doubts, you can raise up those questions as well. We can discuss it before the session. And after these classes, I will share these notes as well in deep and these presentations, so that you guys can really have a quick overview of everything. Okay.
Okay. And one more point, I think Dharani will, right? He asked a question regarding those instruction set. I think that's a very good question, actually. So Dharani, I'll just give some pointers. You can go back and try to read the definition of instruction cycle, machine cycle, and how the MIPS is used in the industry. So these are the 3 points. If you just read high level definitions, and then if you read about the addressing modes, right, you will get an answer to your question. So little bit of reading to be done, but your question was very much valid, actually.
Yeah, you can send the question. We can have it in the next class when people will join. So we can discuss those questions in the next class if anyone have. So you can send me the send of questions you have, and we can have that the discussion 10 minutes before the call in the class itself.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you have questions for another class, to come up, because the more we discuss, the more we learn. That's what I've been learning from last couple of years. Like if you don't ask questions, like if whatever doubt you have, starting from a very silly doubt to a doubt is never a silly doubt. Number one. Number two is, if you don't ask, then you might think that if you, like, sometimes people think like, if I ask today, then I might become fool. That's not the case. If you ask today and clear a doubt, then obviously the one who haven't cleared it will be more confused, and the one who has cleared it will be more perfect. So even if the doubt is silly or whatever, doubt is a doubt. So please do ask, and please do interact, because once you starting to interact, then you will get more grasp on the concepts and things we will be discussing in the near future.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, actually,
Hello.
currently I am in last year.
Yeah.
And one company is coming to our campus for recruiting, and they are mentioned in profile that device driver programming and socket programming.
Okay.
So actually, I know that basic, that what is device driver and sockets, what are sockets. So what they will ask means what they will try to get from me.
Okay, so basically, since if it's for a fresher profile, they will more focus on your knowledge on embedded C, primarily your C knowledge. So and they can even focus on your knowledge on digital electronics. More of a controller. They can also ask questions regarding the microcontroller architectures, and how does the basic questions like how does the program counter works, and how the instruction decoding happens, how the stack works. So these kind of questions they can ask in the interview, or if they are listing the device drivers, they can ask a little bit about the bare metal programming and the middleware programming that is there. Not to that deep, but they can ask some certain questions based upon that. So if you need any help in that, I'm always there. Like in the interview preparation sessions, I can list you out some important questions that can be asked in the interview, and we can prepare for that as well. So if the company is coming, I will always recommend you to definitely go and give the exam, because it will help you to understand what kind of questions being asked by the companies. Generally the questions are not that different, believe me, the questions are same, but it depends upon the company to company, but the questions are generally same. Some questions might be very basic, at a very basic level, or some companies might ask even at a higher level, or even go into much more deeper level. So but the level of the questions that they will ask would be whereabouts same in every company. They will not change. The concept might a little bit change, the depth of that questions might change, but the understanding would not change. So if you need any help, I'm there, and I can list out some basic questions that can be asked in the interview. And I would all recommend you to please do attend the later part of the sessions, because there might be a possibility that they might ask a question that we might be discussing in the sessions, or in the upcoming questions that I might be giving for the next classes. So please be prominent with that.
Just one more suggestion, Raja
Yep.
Bisht, I think, right? So when they are
Yes, sir.
focusing on device drivers, right? So definitely, as Vikrant has mentioned, C would be prominent thing which they'll be asking, because C is the base of everything. Along with that, anything at the interface level, if you are aware of register programming, internal registers of a specific interface, then it will help you. Example, if you have a UART interface, right, serial interface, okay, which you might be aware, because if a company is coming and asking you the kind of device driver programming, then it is expected that the students of that particular college at a very advanced level. So you must know the register levels, and then what Vikrant is mentioning, right? They might ask a question from what we are discussing here. Why he wanted to mention that is, if you see, Vikrant is covering the architecture level. So if you want to write device driver programming, you need to know the architecture. Okay, every interface, how it operates internally, what are the registers, how are they addressed, how is the instructions executed, and how the serial to parallel conversion happens, what are the buses. So all these you need to know, along with the memory related transactions. So everything is important as a part of those device drivers. So yes, I think Vikrant made a good point. You should clearly follow these classes, and then I think it might help you to crack that interview.
Yes, sir. I will definitely follow these classes.
And see, if you are already into the you might be fresher, but others might be into the industry. But it's a good brush up for all of them to understand these things. And might be during the college or training level, people would have just gone through very quickly. But here we have a lot of time. We are now into the industry, and we need to learn the basics, learn how every interaction happens within a specific chipset like a microcontroller. So I think it's a good platform for you all, so we can extend this platform a lot, and talk on a lot of things, practice on boards. There is a lot of scope to learn together. So that's why the whole intention is, if you see, right, we did not want to charge for experience, but at least for the effort we wanted to have some amount. That's why you don't see that much amount on this training, to just encourage us. Also, we just wanted to have a minimal amount, so you don't get these kind of discussions for this much of small amount. So because we understand how people struggle in the embedded industry, we just wanted to have it at a lower amount and pass on our experience as much as possible to you. Okay, see, be interactive in the session, ask lots and lots of questions, then it helps everyone to learn. Not only you, all the other participants would get a lot of knowledge from your question. Okay, Vikrant. So I think we can wrap up for the day. I don't see if no one has any question. I think we can close the session, Vikrant.
Yeah, definitely. And for tomorrow's session, I would be sharing the start of the class some embedded questions, embedded C questions, basics, very basics ones to little intermediate level, a little bit basic ones, and we can discuss those questions in the next to next class. That can really help you guys in your upcoming interviews and college. If someone is in college, then it can help you in the college placements as well.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, guys. Then have a nice day. Have a nice good
Evening.
sleep, actually. Yeah, thank you, Vikrant. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, bye.
Thank you.